mode.
Hey everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. This is Denise, and today we're going to be continuing to learn about SketchUp. Thanks everybody for submitting any projects that they worked on to Edmodo. It was great to see those. I hope you guys enjoyed making them, and I hope you guys are going to keep trying and submitting stuff. We're going to be learning some different techniques this week in online drawing. And I know this seems like a big departure from programming, but we will be using this with different software with 3D printing. And this is definitely a large part of engineering. If you consider just like the ability to construct on the computer, the ability to model, it's really important to understand that aspect of the engineering world. So again, thanks everybody for showing some submitting some stuff on Edmodo. If you guys missed that, I have a few. Here we have this bookshelf. This person even added some books. Very nice detail. See a cool detail there with that knob. And we have, again, some different books. You can look at that detail down there. It's very nice. This is made by the same person. A little bit different. If you guys are sitting here wondering how they got these textures, we'll be talking about that as well. Oops, I missed one side. Kind of like a plywood bookshelf here. For really thin books, goes back a little thicker. It's almost like you could have something hidden in the back of this bookcase. It's just some cool stuff. There were more. I just wanted to show you guys a few. Someone even worked on, which is really cool, a team worked on a stadium. Spent a lot of time and work into this. This is awesome, guys. You have some using the arcs to build the entranceways and the tunnel inside there. You can look in there. So really cool. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and continue on the lesson. Let's jump to the PowerPoint unless anyone has any questions so far. I guess on anything that we learned last week. All right, great. So we will be using SketchUp again, and what we're going to go over today, we're going to learn about entity shape information, using arcs, freehand drawing, text. We're going to talk more about push-pull and some different things we can do with that, copying objects, the move tool, and then finally we're going to make a table. We're going to draw it through subtraction. And we're also going to talk about the difference between grouping and adding components. And we're going to talk about that at the end. So let's go back to this idea of drawing arcs that we started last week. We're going to just go into this a little bit more about the different things we can do with arcs and why they're useful for us. So we remember that to draw an arc, you click for your starting point, click again for your ending point, and that will look like a line. And then you can kind of bend the line into an arc. Pull or push it into this bulge. Everybody can pull up SketchUp. Yeah. So we have this arc. If you guys could just please be moving, working along with me here. You have your start, your finish, and then you can pull it and push it into a bulge. Once you get it started, before you click, you can simply, there we go, you can simply type without clicking on anything else. You can simply type, I want a 1000, just type 1000, and that will specify how far up that center line was to fix the bulge. When we're doing any measurements, I want to just specify this, guys. You start with that rectangle by clicking once, and then you're just moving your mouse. You can simply type in the dimensions. You're going to have the first dimension and then the second dimension, the comma in between. And that way, you don't actually have to click down here to change these. You can just simply type, press enter, and it'll fix it. All right, so back to the arcs. You can right click on this guy and click entity info like we've done before. You can see that this arc has segments similar to how our circles are made of segments, and these can be changed to make a smoother effect or a less smooth effect. But again, even down to this 3 here, but again, if I finish this and make it a surface by adding a line and pulling this through, it's going to try really hard to give us a smooth shape instead of, this shape here. This is a polygon, but I have it set so that it has a lot of segments. Let's give this one 4 segments. There we go. See how this has the individual sides? Well, with our arcs, it's going to try to make it as smooth as possible. So even though this one only has 3 sides, it tries to smooth it out, and here we have the individual faces. All right, so what can arcs be used for? If you're making a shape, like this box here, maybe oriented, and you end up making a corner that is really sharp, and you want to round it out for whatever reason. You want it to not go down into this corner, but just be smooth edge. And you can see that a lot in architecture or in building a model. A lot of things don't go into a sharp corner. It's more difficult to make. They'll have that smooth edge. It'll look nicer as well. To smooth it out, you can use your arc. So click arc, and we're going to add an arc starting somewhere on this line. We'll have our start, go directly across to the other end of the triangle, click again to finish, and then we're going to pull down this bulge line until we get to the tangent. And the line will turn purple and say tangent to edge, and that's how you know that you have the tangent. So we can use this tangent to edge to create a smooth curve as opposed to this point. And I can erase these lines and have that smooth edge. And it's all about where you start. So if I wanted it to, I could start from all the way up here. My arc, so start and finish and curve this way, and that's going to be a shallower curve, or go all the way down here, straight across. And then that would be a little bit longer. It just depends on what you want. And then can delete this edge. And instead of having that sharp corner, you're going to have more of a smooth effect here. See if we can erase this. Oops, no, you cannot. So sometimes you're going to end up with these ugly edges, but don't worry, in your final project, that's just telling you kind of how this is constructed. You can go into the view and change that. We'll talk about that later, but I don't want you guys to be worrying about your edges necessarily. Those aren't always going to be there. So I'm going to keep them on there for now, though. All right. Oh, someone has a question. Oh, so remember, to get this large toolbox, you go into View, Tool Palettes, Large Tool Set. Good question, John. All right, so in addition to using a tangent to smooth out that edge, you can use a tangent to build a spiral. So let's take a look at that again. Get your arc. I want everyone to try this. And we're going to start by just building a simple arc, constructing a simple arc, this one. And then I'm going to start another one, and I'm going to choose the start point to be the end point of the one I just finished. And you'll see when I start pulling it away that the cyan line appears. And I can use that, follow this kind of cyan line to build my spiral. Just making sure it's cyan, clicking and then clicking again until it goes black. And kind of just move through. Remember, you have to click twice and build your spiral. And what it's doing is it's creating this spiral by ensuring that it's tangent to the other lines. All right, and do you see how that works? Mine's not a perfectly smooth spiral. I could have spent time, made sure that it went in evenly. But so to know that it's working, you just got to know, you got to see that cyan there. All right. Great. And we have this kind of strange moment there. That's another way arcs are cool. You don't really see this used as much, but it definitely is a cool effect. All right. So we talked about measured arcs by just typing in that after you place the start and the end line, you can type in how far up or down you want the bulge to go. We use the arcs to create arc tangents that smoothed out that point. And then we use it to kind of create that swirl. You can again change the number of line segments, the number of arc segments by right-clicking on the edge and going into the entity info. Now let's talk a little bit about drawing with freehand. So go back into SketchUp. I'm going to delete everything that I have. And if I click on this button on the left, this freehand here, it's under arc and above push-pull on my large toolbar. I can draw a line by clicking and continuing to hold down the mouse button while moving. I can draw whatever shape that I want. And it's, as it pops up, and I can use that. If I connect it from the starting, the two endpoints, it will create a surface. And I can use it just like any other surface, any other simple shape that I've drawn. It might be tempting to use the free draw or the freehand to draw a shape that you want. Maybe if you're drawing a cathedral and you wanted a certain tip to your tower, it might be tempting to try to sit there and draw out, oh, this is, oops, with the freehand to try to draw, oh, this is how I want it to look, you know, like this. But that's not going to be as clean or as sharp, or you can't measure it as well, use accurate measurements as if you use the simple shapes and tools that SketchUp gives you. So you can use freehand to try that out, but when you're building and modeling with bigger shapes or something that you want really accurate or to have clean, sharp lines, you're going to be using more of the combination of the arcs and the circles and the different shapes that SketchUp gives you, along with combining them with the push-pull and using move as well. All right. Do we have any questions? Okay, the last thing we're going to talk about from last week is just the text. So actually I'm going to create a square real fast and then make that into a box. A lot of times architects will label, and engineers will label what their models with different information. If, for instance, we were making this box and we needed to use a specific material for this side, or you wanted to specify that this was, the side 1 as opposed to side 2 or 3, you can use text to show that. And you'll find text in your large toolbar, and it has this ABC here, labeled text. Click anywhere on the screen and enter text will pop up, and you can type whatever you want. So I'm going to label this side as side 1. Just click. If you use the orbit key, you'll notice that this first text that we entered doesn't act like the other shapes and lines that we have been using. It's fixed to the screen at that point as opposed to being fixed to the object. So this kind of text might be nice. I did edit undo to get rid of that text. That text might be nice. That free-floating text might be nice if you wanted to enter a title, such as my box. You can then right-click on that information, on that text, Entity Info. You can change the font, make it larger, make it a different font. And then that way, no matter how you orient yourself, you'll still have this text in your upper right corner. But now how am I going to label that one side as side A or side 1? To do that, you use the same tool, this text tool, but instead of just clicking, I want you guys to wait until your mouse is hovering over either the face or the side. We're going to choose this edge here. Click on that edge and pull your cursor away. When you let go, you'll see that this text, which you can replace with anything, I'm going to replace with side 1, click away, is kind of anchored to this edge. And so choose your selection key. You can click it and you'll notice that it's all just one object that's connected to this edge. All right, so if you use your orbit key, this time you can see that while this text stays anchored or stays kind of stationary in this upper right hand corner, the text that explains that this is side 1, it stays in relation to that side, so it can actually be hidden if it's not in our orientation view. It is staying to that side. All right, and again, you can edit that text. The last kind of text we're going to talk about is text, it's this 3D text here, and it's this tool right under our text tool, and you can use this to actually add text if this box was representing, or if this box had my name on it, and I was trying to model that in real life, I can click on that and this window will pop up. I will type Denise's box. That's what I want the text to read. You can say how you want it aligned. I'm going to say center. And this is Filled just means what it's going to look like because it's 3D. Extruded means how 3D it is, like how much it's push-pulled, if that makes sense, how thick it is, how thick the font is going to be. I can click fonts and change whatever I need to. And then I hit place, and you'll see that the text is attached to my cursor. And I'm going to place it on my box. Once I click, you'll notice that the Move tool is already highlighted, so I can select and move this text anywhere I'd like. And if I move my cursor till I get to those plus points, you'll see that it switched from the move to the rotate at those plus points. And I can rotate my text any way I need. All right. And you can see that this text is 3D. If I zoom in there, that it's coming out of the box. We still have my box Denise in the corner. If I wanted the text to just be flat on the box as though it were painted on, I could right click on that on this shape, click Entity Info. I actually won't be able to do it from this point. I'm going to have to delete that text and add a new one. So again, click that 3D text. I have Denise's box here, and I'm not going to check the extruded box. So basically that's saying I don't want any thickness. And when I place, now it's flat. All right, so any questions on the text? All right. And so the 3D text can be used as part of your model. Just having this text floating in the corner can be used for the author or for the title, and then you can actually anchor the text by selecting a side and pulling away. And that will follow that specific side. Okay. And all of these can be selected or deleted by just clicking on them. Great. All right. So now that we've gone through that, let's go through a little review of what we did last week. We talked about orientation, how if you're stuck with standard orientation, if you wanted that circle to be perpendicular, but it's stuck flat with that rectangle, you can do an example shape off to the side while pressing your Shift key. Remain pressing that Shift key, and then go ahead and do the shape the way you want it on top of your original shape. Okay. So in this case, I initially drew this rectangle, and in order to get the circle to bisect it in that way, to cut it in half in that flat direction, I pressed my Shift key, I made this circle down below, and while still pressing that same Shift key, I could orient the circle this way. We use the Follow Me tool, which needs that shape and the path. That tool is right there. And you can use it to cut away and to add to objects. And this was really cool because you could see that with a simple shape such as these stair steps, you can create a really cool, larger 3D shape. So let's talk about some other 3D techniques, such as measured push-pull and inferred push-pull. So we've been using push-pull to create 3D. But let's talk about how we can be a little more specific and accurate when we're building our shapes. So if I wanted to build a cube, who can raise their hand and tell me how a cube is different from just a regular box? Or what makes a cube special? Can anyone raise their hand? All right. What do you think, Tegan?
It has volume.
It does have volume. A box has volume too, though. Do you remember what makes a cube specific? I'll give you a hint at what's make a square different than a rectangle. Do you know, Tegan? Do you want me to ask, call on someone else?
Sure.
Okay. What do you think, John? Can you help Tegan out? Hey, John, are you there? All right. I'm going to put John's hand down. All right. So does anyone know what makes, not because it's 3D, so the difference between a square and a rectangle is that a square has all equal sides. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle, any rectangle. It has 4 sides, and that's how you know, that's what distinguishes it from being a circle or a triangle. It has 4 sides, and that makes it a rectangle. It's a flat shape. A square is also a rectangle. It's a specific kind of rectangle, and it has 4 equal sides. And in SketchUp, those are shown with that diagonal across. And you can see in the bottom right corner, the dimensions are the same for the first and the second dimension, because those are the 2 sides, the length and the width. So a rectangle has 4 sides that are equal on 2 sides. So this side is equal, or these sides are equal, and these sides are equal. A square is equal on all 4 sides. A box is similar to a 3D rectangle. It's just, imagine if rectangles were stacked on top of each other. However, a square isn't always a cube when you pull it up. A square is only a cube when all of its sides are equal. So, hold on one second, guys. To make a cube, in this, I would start my square. I'm just going to enter the dimensions so that I know that they're the same. I'm going to say 1,000, 1,000. So I know that's a square because it's equal sides. And then I can use push-pull, select that, pull up a little bit, and then again, I'm going to enter a number and give it a dimension. And that dimension is going to be 1,000. And so now, as we rotate, we can see that this side, the length, the width, and the height are all equal, and that's what makes it a cube. All right. So measured push-pull can be used along with just measured of any of these shapes into making these specific shapes. For example, this is how you would make a dice using this game. You know, you need that cube. You need all sides to be equal. Hey, everybody, can you raise your hand if you can hear me right now? Put hands down. Just everybody, if you guys could raise your hand if you can hear me. All right, John. All right, you can hear me. I can hear you. Okay. Hold on one second. It seems someone cannot hear me. All right, so I'm going to send him a message. Sorry about that, John. I hope you can hear me soon. All right. So this is our 1,000 by 1,000 by 1,000 cube. 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters by 1,000 millimeters. That's what that means. If I want to make another cube the same size, I can start by making this square again. So I clicked on the starting point, I pulled my mouse over, and I'm just going to type 1000, 1000. And when I go to push up, I can make it the same size simply by clicking on that surface and then bringing my mouse to the end point of that square. And you can actually do this with any object. So that will make it the same height as this cube and make it an identical cube, or I can even click that and it'll make it the same height as that box and make that into a box. All right, and then you just click once you get to that inference point, and that's push pulling by inference, and it's how you can make things like columns all the same height. You simply, so to make this box the same height as this, or this cube into a box the same height as this box, I simply select that top surface and bring my mouse up to that endpoint and click. And so now those are the same height. All right. And so we can see that here. In this situation, I started pushing or pulling the square up, and then I just entered that 5,000 millimeters. And here you can see those inference lines. I have this surface connected, and I had started to push up, and my mouse was simply over here, and it inferred that is how high they want me to go. The computer is inferring. You can use push-pull also to cut openings into objects. And so what I mean by that is you can start with a box and you draw a shape in it and use push-pull to punch out that shape and draw like an archway or something like that. So let's check that out. And I want everyone to be working along with me and trying this stuff out as well. And this one I'm going to give the chance, we're going to combine a few ideas. So I'm going to give, if you guys could watch me this time, and then I'm going to want everybody to create their own archways as well. I'm going to start by creating a rectangle, and I'm going to create it 4,000 by 1,000 feet. So it's this nice long rectangle, and I'm going to pull it into a box. And I'm going to make the box 6,000. Not feet. We're using millimeters. I accidentally slipped of the tongue there, said feet. So we have this tall, thin wall. And I'm going to try to create an arched walkway through here. I'm going to try to punch out an arched walkway. And to do that, I'm going to start with just this rectangle shape. And to make sure I have an accurate, I'm going to start at the midpoint and go oh, John, I'm glad you can hear me. I'm actually not going to start at the midpoint. I'm just going to freestyle this for right now. So I'm going to try to get it to the as middle as possible and check out my dimensions. Try to get that there. I'm not being as careful right now, just because this is not a long project I'm going to be working on. All right, and so I have this rectangle shape, but I want it to be a curved archway, so I'm going to add I'm going to add an arch. Start with this endpoint, end with that endpoint, and pull up this archway here. I'm going to erase this line. And then, so that people can walk through this archway, I'm going to punch out that shape with the push-pull tool. click that surface and push until it gives kind of that error message, offset limited. Click that and you'll see that it acts almost like a window or a doorway, and I have my arch. So go ahead guys and try to make this shape. Raise your hand when you're finished. Message me if you have any questions. Again, I just made my rectangle, pulled that up into a wall. I made a rectangle on that surface and added an arc to give it this shape of a doorway. And then I used the push-pull tool to punch out that shape. So go ahead, raise your hand when you're finished. And if you are finished, you can add anything to your archway while you're waiting. But make sure to raise your hand first. All right, make sure you're raising your hand when you're finished. If you have any questions, send me a message. I'm just adding to my archway. Great, I saw another hand pop up. If you're confused at all at what you should be doing or how to complete this, remember we're just starting with our rectangle. That's our base shape. We're going to make that into a wall, and we want to punch out a doorway. So we're going to draw a rectangle on this face. Going to add an arch to that by our start point, our end point, and then to pull this up into an arc. To make this all one surface, I'm just going to erase that one edge. Then I'm going to use the push-pull tool to punch it out. All right. I'm going to start calling on some people and just seeing how they're doing. Hey Sherry, how are you doing with this archway?
Oh, I got it. I got it good.
Okay, you got it? All right, please make sure and raise your hand. All right, Max, you made the arc as well? Oh, right. Sorry, I see that you can't raise your hand. You're using the iPad. Just sorry about that. How about you, William? Hey William, how are you doing on this archway? All right, well, William, can you hear me? Okay. Don't know if he has microphone there. Great. All right, just one more. Hey Logan, how are you doing on your archway? Do you have any questions or is it going okay? All right, I don't know if people's microphones aren't working, but I hope you guys have all got this archway. I know some of you guys are on iPads and stuff like that, so you can't respond. But let's keep going. So that's how you punch through, kind of and cut these openings or windows. So let's take a moment and talk about the offset tool. The offset tool is really a very useful thing. It's up here, as you can see, next to the rotate tool. So you can make any shape, like a circle or a square. Let's start with a square because it's more clear how useful it is with something like a square. Or a rectangle. We can just make a rectangle. Remember, the difference is that a square has equal sides. With this offset button right next to the rotate and the orbit, you start on an edge. You select a surface and an edge, and then you can move back and forth to see how much of a perimeter, of an equal perimeter around the outside you want to create. And that way you get this even strip around the edge that's all the same size. And so this can be a very useful tool, as you guys can imagine, because it creates equal shapes without you having to guess where is the middle or how can I draw this rectangle, so it creates an even strip. And it's the offset tool. And you can use it again starting from this edge and just pulling back and forth can determine. And if you want to be making equal strips, you just start, click the offset tool and type in how wide you want that outer strip to be. So let's say you wanted it to be 75 millimeters. That's really thin, as you can see there. But you can still select that fit shape and you'll just get this really thin wall, as you can see there. Kind of got this cool basin effect that you can create really quickly. And that's the offset tool. So you guys can try that out real fast. Use a rectangle and the offset tool. You can even add a little arc here. Let's see. And again, use that pull across tool to make different shapes. It's kind of an ominous shape, so we'll get rid of that guy. But all right, so we can use this cutting openings technique and the offset tool to make a really even table pretty fast without having to work to, copy and paste those legs. We can punch out these sides of a box and create a table with equal size legs. So let's take a look at that. Delete this guy. I'm actually just going to start a new window. So we start with this person that we can have for perspective, and starting at the origin. So I'm going to make it a table, and to start with, I'm going to make a rectangle and pull that into a box. I want my rectangle, let's see, in comparison to the person, when I'm pulling my mouse around, I'm looking at those dimensions in the bottom right, and I think, well, maybe I want my table to be 2500 by 2500. I want a square table. I want the top to be a square at least. And then I'm going to push-pull up until about where her waist is. And I see that's 864.5 millimeters, but I want it to be, I'm just going to go with a basic 800 so that it's even. So now my table is 2500 millimeters by 2500 millimeters, and this is 800 millimeters. All right. So now that we have our box, I'm going to use the offset tool and some of the information we have to create a rectangle for the legs. So again, I'm going to be taking a look at the distance given to me in the bottom right corner while I move around. And I think, yeah, I want my table legs to be about 100 millimeters long. So I type 100 before clicking the second time, and that rectangle is established. Then we're going to use the Move tool twice. First, to move this edge down to the bottom so that it's creating these legs that will go all the way down to the floor, and we can punch that whole shape out. And second, I don't want my table legs to be the same thickness as the edge. I think I want the edge to be a little bit thicker, so I'm going to select this whole top line and move it down on the blue axis. See how it says blue axis there? I'm going to move it down 100. So I type 100 in, press enter, and it moves it down exactly 100. So now this table distance should be 100, and this should be 200. Let's see that again. So we move this down, up, being careful just to move it down on the blue axis. "100 millimeters. And then we can use the push-pull tool like we saw before, grab that side, push all the way till we get that message, offset limited. Click that. You'll see we have punched out that shape, and we almost have our table. Now all we have to do is the same thing 2 more times. Use the offset tool to create a rectangle with that 100 millimeter ring by typing 100 millimeter in. Going to move that one line down to the bottom on that blue. Move this one down. I'm going to let it know I want it to move down 100. Then I'm going to punch it through. I'm left with this box here, but all I have to do is select it and delete it along with that line. All right, one more time. Offset key. Let it know I want the perimeter to be 100 millimeters. Move the bottom line down on that blue axis. Again, on blue axis, move down 100 millimeters and punch it out. Select this face left over and this line left over, and now we're left with this table with those 4 equal legs. Any questions? Great. So this is a rather large and kind of low table, as we can see, but with this woman as perspective, we can see if I made this table using these measurements in real life, you know, what would this table be for? Maybe something like a ping pong game or something like that. I'm not quite sure, but It gives us the perspective of what it would look like with these actual measurements in real life. All right. So we're going to briefly get into groups and components today. We might need to spend a little bit more time on this on Wednesday because we only have 10 minutes left, and I want to introduce your homework assignment. But for groups and components, we're going to start off talking about the idea that you guys probably have run into, and that's if you have two separate shapes in SketchUp and they touch each other, you move one to touch the other, they are now connected. It's like they're made out of glue, and so now their surfaces are stuck together. And we can see that. If I make a cylinder using a circle in the push-pull tool and select the whole cylinder, then use my move tool to move that whole selection. Let's make sure I moved it on the table. Sometimes it's tricky to tell because you're moving in 3D. Moving on that red line and then on the green. And then on the blue. All right, there we go. Now they're definitely intersected. Now if I try to move this cylinder, hold on one second. Now if I try to move this cylinder, it's connected to the table. See if there's a way I can show you guys this. Oh, should be connected to that table. I don't know. Let me try rotating it here. It might be the fact that we're using that smooth edge and here, let me just show you guys with this. I'm going to use these two cubes because I know this will work. All right, so if I move this cube so that it touches the face of that cube, move it just on this red axis here. These are now touching. Now when I move this cube, they are stuck together. See that? That's sticky geometry. And I think it's just because I was using this side, and you know how it's trying to estimate the side using those different segments, it's not going to work as well. But this is what is known as sticky geometry. And it's kind of the idea behind what a group is. When you make a group, or when you make a component, you go into Edit. First of all, you select all of the items that you want to be in your group or component, and you go into Edit and either Make Component or Make Group. The difference is, once you do that, it establishes this blue box, and the items, you can no longer edit them. They're no longer sticky. They act as one object together that's not editable. And they act pretty similarly. There's one big difference, but we'll probably get to that on Wednesday. So let's take a quick look on why we would use this. I'm going to open a file. And I have some columns here that I made before. And so let's go ahead and see these columns. I'm going to select all of the columns. And I'm going to make them a group. So now all together, if I try to move them, they move as one. Again, I can rotate them if I let my mouse hover over these plus marks, and they rotate as one. If I try to edit one, it won't let me. They're non-editable. The way we would edit them is if we right-click and press edit. I can make a copy of my group, paste it, right-click on that copy, ask to edit the group, and you can see that I can edit it at that point and make changes to the copy. Oh no. This is going to be confusing. Hold on one second. Alright, and I can make changes to the copy. Don't mind what I was just doing there. I had already saved those as components. But the change I made to this copy did not change the original group. Right? I made a change here. Once I had right-clicked and asked to edit that group. Now it's a group again, and I can't edit it unless I right-click and edit. And they're two separate things. If I highlight this group, however, and instead say, I'm going to right-click it and choose Explode. And what Explode does is it separates them from, instead of being in a group, to just being the regular objects. And I actually, before, when I saved it, yeah. So now these are just regular objects I can change. Change that. And I did that by right-clicking on the group and hitting Explode. So let me go ahead and select this group of columns again. And instead of edit make group, I'm going to make component. I'm going to call it columns. I'm going to copy and paste these columns. And this time, when I edit this component, notice that any change I made is mirrored in the original group. So guys, this is really useful if you have a whole group of columns, you make each column a component, then, and that's how it originally was, so let me open the original. And that way, changing one column length would change all the column lengths. So let me show you that real fast. So these are all components. And when I change one of their lengths, I have to edit component first. All of them change. All right, so when you're building bigger projects, if you're building a temple, components can be really useful, not just for columns, but for all sorts of stuff. To select a whole, one group. If I made this one group, I'd be able to move all the columns at once. And if the group was made up of these individual components, when I change the height of one column, you change the height of all of them. All right, guys, we only have 1 minute left. I want to really quickly introduce you guys to the idea of what your homework is going to be. I want you guys to try and create a lamp and a lampshade. Oops. And to do that, I want you guys to consider using the Follow Me tool and try to be a little bit innovative. I'll show you this tip. If I have this circle, and I can go up from this circle, you can kind of see that this creates the base of a lampshade. And I want you guys to create a shape that uses lines It comes from this top line to this bottom line like that. And then the pathway is going to go around this circle. So I actually have to jump off. There's another webinar at 1:25. Sorry, this was a little bit rushed. But I will hopefully be talking to you guys soon. And good luck on the homework. I want to see some cool lamps with some cool bases for those lamps. And you guys will be learning how to do a sphere next time. And yeah, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.